A heavy, intimidating knock shook me out of bed in the middle of the night. I reached for my phone. My prosecutor mode kicking in. Who in the world bangs on the door like that? At 2 a.m., I opened it to two men in black uniforms, badges flashing under the porch light. HOA Police, one of them declared. Voice firm, you're under arrest for several violations. HOA Police, that wasn't anything. My eyes scanned over their uniforms, tacky badges, clashing belts. Something was wrong, let's go, the taller one snapped, getting his handcuffs out. I crossed my arms, show me some ID. The shorter one hesitated, the taller one's jaw clenched. I stepped back, reaching for my phone the instant my fingers made contact with the screen. The taller man sprang, getting my wrist in a crushing grip. And that's when I realized this wasn't harassment. This was a setup. When I moved into this neighborhood, I believed I was fleeing mayhem as a criminal prosecutor. My days were spent with liars and criminals I did not expect to see, one operating the HO. Her name was Karen, and she was in charge like a dictator. Within days of moving into the house, she was on my door, pontificating about violations, a trash can left too long curtains. The incorrect shade of white, her smile was thin, her words tinged with veiled threats. I ignored her bad idea. Strange things started happening, fines for violations. I never committed complaints from neighbors who swore they never reported me, warning letters, each more aggressive than the last. Then came the knock at 2 a.m. Fake police handcuffs. This wasn't just an HOA dispute anymore. Karen wasn't trying to enforce rules, she was trying to control me, and she had just made a deadly mistake. The taller man's grip tightened around my wrist, his eyes cold and unyielding. Let go, I told him, my voice steady but firm. You're resisting arrest, he retorted. Resisting arrest? I came close to laughing. I had spent years in courtrooms dismantling cases like this. These guys weren't cops, they were playing dress-up. I pulled my hand away and stepped back, eyeing them both. Their uniforms didn't quite match, different shades of navy, different belt styles. Their badges looked cheap, like something you'd purchase online. No name tags, no department badges. Which precinct you're with? I asked. The shorter fellow hesitated. The taller fellow glared. We don't answer to you, he snapped. HOA authority supersedes local law in this community. Now I did laugh. That's not how the law works. I reached for my phone. How about I call the real police? You can explain it to them. The shorter man's face paled. He looked at his partner, but the taller one stayed his ground. You're under arrest, he growled. Grabbing for his handcuffs again, I backed up a step and pulled my wallet out of my pocket, but instead of my license, I flipped open my prosecutor's badge. Their faces changed in an instant. The shorter one's hands began shaking, the taller one's jaw clenched, but I saw the flash of doubt in his eyes. You just tried to falsely arrest a criminal prosecutor, I said, my voice low with menace. That's impersonating an officer, illegal detainment, and attempted assault. I put on record on my phone. Now I suggest you tell me who sent you before I call the cops. The shorter one stepped back, his confidence shattered. This was a mistake, man. But the taller one wasn't going to back down. You think you're above the HOA, he snapped. Karen warned us about you. You think the law's on your side. Not here, Karen, I gritted my jaw. So this wasn't about breaking HOA rules. This was personal. Then let's see how she feels when you're in handcuffs, I said, dialing 911. The shorter guy panicked. Screw this, man, let's go. He ran off. The taller one glared at me, but when I held up my phone holding him on audio, he cursed under his breath and took off. After his accomplice, I stepped out on the porch to watch them run down the street and lose themselves in the night. My heart was still pounding, but I wasn't afraid. I was angry. Karen thought she could boss around this neighborhood with fear. She believed she could control me. Big mistake. I looked down at my phone. The recording's still going. Karen had just opened fire, and she had no clue who she was messing with. I didn't wait the second the phony cops disappeared. I completed dialing 911. This is Prosecutor James Carter, I declared, my voice firm. I was just attacked by two men pretending to be officers. I have video proof. 10 minutes later, real police sirens flashed outside my home. Officers stepped onto my front porch. Their presence, a stark contrast to the wannabe enforcers who had just attempted to take me down. I played the video for them, every word, every threat, every lie recorded. The lead officer, Detective Harris, frowned. "You said they were HOA police?" I nodded. He shared a look with his partner. "We've had complaints before, HOA intimidation, but never anything this extreme of sinking." I was feeling comfortable in my stomach. So this is not the first time Harris breathed, not even close. That's when I realized Karen had done this before. By morning, the investigation was in full force. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, reviewing security footage, asking questions. I wasn't alone. Karen had targeted, but I was the first to respond. Back then came the bombshell. Detective Harris called me that afternoon. "We pursued one of your guys." My hand clenched on the telephone and he cracked quickly. They weren't real police, clearly, just two men Karen had hired to enforce rules of HOA. My gut flipped. I had known this, but hearing it confirmed made blood boil. She paid them to scare homeowners. Harris went on, informed them they had arrest rights, and here's the kicker. Half the neighborhood thought it. I gnashed teeth because she'd been operating this scam for years. Harris sighed, glances that way. "We're still excavating, but so far we've got complaints of forced evictions, phantom fines, and even threats of foreclosure. All bogus, all meant to intimidate her into staying in charge." Karen had made the HOA her own dictatorship. She had no actual power. His couldn't enforce criminal statutes, but she had fashioned an illusion of authority so dominant that people obeyed in fear. And now she had crossed the line. "You intending to file charges?" Harris questioned. I didn't think twice, flat out. This wasn't about me anymore. Karen had weaponized fear. She had intimidated individuals out of their homes, stolen their peace of mind. It was time someone put a stop to her. I spent the next 24 hours getting ready. I collected testimony, pulled up HOA bylaws, uncovered every legal loophole in Karen's plan. By morning, I had a complete case, prepared harassment, conspiracy, impersonation. She had thought she could manipulate the system. She was going to discover what happens when you engage a prosecutor in a fight. And when the police came to her door, she would realize her reign was over. The news caught on like wildfire by lunchtime. The whole neighborhood knew the truth. Karen had been operating a bogus police force through fear and intimidation to intimidate homeowners. At first, some people came to her defense. "She was just enforcing the rules," a few whispered. But as more tales emerged, bogus fines, threats, even a family who were forced to sell their home, sympathy gave way to outrage. By nightfall, a crowd had assembled outside Karen's home. I stood at the perimeter, watching as angry homeowners demanded explanations. Then the door swung open. Karen emerged from her normal smugness, usurped by hardly veiled panic. "All a misunderstanding," she declared, holding up her hands. "I was defending the integrity of this neighborhood." A scoff came from somewhere in the crowd. "Hiring phony cops?" Karen's gaze shifted to me. "This man is seeking to demolish our neighborhood. He's distorting everything." I crossed my arms. "No, Karen, I'm revealing you," before she could have reacted. The sound of sirens surrounded the area. Two police vehicles rolled up, red and blue lights blinking against the fading sky. The crowd opened as uniformed officers moved out. Detective Harris led the way. He produced a document. "Karen Miller, you are being arrested for fraud, impersonation of an officer, harassment, and conspiracy to extort." Karen's face turned white. "You can't do this. I was just applying HOA policies." Harris snapped handcuffs around her wrists. "Policies don't trump state law." She strained toward the crowd. "You're all making a big mistake without me. This neighborhood will come apart." A voice from the rear shouted, "Good, at least we won't have bogus cops breaking into our houses." Laughter rolled through the group. Karen struggled as the officers ushered her to the police car, but it was done. She had ruled through intimidation for years. Tonight she was helpless as the police cruiser drove away. I turned to glance at my neighbors present. Some were in shock, others relieved. One elderly man had moved forward. "We should have intercepted her earlier." I shook my head. "Fear's a silencer, but she's gone now." Another person spoke up. "We need an effective HOA board, one that works for us." Whispers of agreement circulated through the crowd. Karen's empire had fallen, and now the community could rebuild. I took a breath and let the tension drain from my body. I had battled criminals in court for years, But this battle had been personal. Karen believed she was in control of the law. But tonight the law had brought her down, with Karen gone. The neighborhood felt different, lighter, freer. For the first time in years, people weren't intimidated to speak up. A week later, the HOA convened an emergency meeting this time. No threats, no bogus cops, just homeowners finally taking back control. We cast to dissolve the existing HOA board. One resident stated the decision was unanimous. Karen's few remaining allies stepped down under pressure, and a new board was established, one that functioned for the people, not against them. I was at the back observing. It all happened. Justice wasn't merely about locking up criminals. It was about repairing the harm they caused, and Karen had caused a lot. Her trial arrived quickly. The evidence was mounting: videos, statements, financial documents laying bare her lies. She attempted to portray herself as a misinterpreted leader. But the jury wasn't fooled. Guilty. She was convicted of 5 years for fraud, impersonation, and harassment. Not as great as I'd have liked, but long enough to send a message. Abuse of power came with a price. The day she was led away, she glanced at me one final time. Gone was the smug superiority, the arrogance. All that was left was a woman who'd lost absolutely everything. Power has strange effects on individuals. It begins small. One rule twisted, one line crossed, and before they realize it, they're running a dictatorship, believing they're untouchable. Karen wasn't some criminal mastermind. She was just a home-owning woman with an appetite for domination. But little power in the wrong hands is as bad as a gun in the wrong hands. I'd witnessed it in courtrooms now. I'd witnessed it on my own block. As I went home that evening, I gazed about at the houses, the windows aglow, the families at last free from Karen's dictatorship. This had begun as a personal battle, but it had become something greater at times. Defending oneself against bullies isn't always a matter of personal justice. It's about defending everyone they injure along the way. I reached my doorstep, feeling the weight of the past few weeks fall off my shoulders. Then, just as I was stepping inside, I saw something on my doorstep: a letter. No name, no return address, just a solitary sentence, scribed in red ink. "This isn't over." I exhaled slowly, a smirk beginning to rise on my lips. If people wanted to do it again, let them, because this time I was